before they can overcome them, they inevitably get a mentor. And in the case of Star Wars, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. But pick a movie and there's a
So
mentor.
you can be our Obi-Wan for AI.
I'll be the Obi-Wan for AI. That would be great. Well, the Obi-Wan for implementing this stuff like this. There's a lot.
Can I be Yoda for culture?
You may be Yoda. Yoda is the same thing.
Hi, I'm Matt Egol, host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive impact by focusing on customer experience and culture together. I'm excited to introduce my guest, Chris Hodges. Chris is the author of Noblesse Automation Now, and he works with executives and their HR business partners on high ROI intelligent automation programs. Chris is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and the London Business School, and he's also a GE certified black belt in quality management. Before launching his own firm, he led the intelligent automation practices in Northern Europe for Accenture and Deloitte. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We're going to have a lot of fun, and there'll be lots of discussion of AI here. And just to let the audience know, I've definitely certified that Chris is not a bot.
I'm sure I'll say something irreverent and prove it.
Yeah, exactly. So Chris and I are teaming on a collective called the CX on the Rocks Collective. Some of you may have seen him talk there, or me, and seen some of the other guests on the podcast from the collective in recent months. Chris is wearing the AI hat in the group. I wear the culture hat. So we'll definitely have a lot of fun talking about AI and how culture and AI go together on the podcast.
They do. They do.
So just to get us rolling, Chris, given your focus on AI, what do you see as some of the main ways that AI is changing how companies work on customer experience?
I think that what's happening, and it's a great question, and AI and intelligent automation. So I combine those two together. Intelligent automation meaning just automating various processes. The opportunity is bigger than the current realization, obviously, to do things better, faster, and what I call help humans be heroes in the world of CX. And it's not just CX, but CX specifically, since we're talking about that. How many people who talk to customers want to be encumbered by 10 systems that they're bouncing around in swivel chair computing? How do you manage to be incredibly responsive to customers when you're jumping around through all kinds of systems? So if I were to simplify it, I'd say that's what it is. It allows humans to be heroes in the eyes of the customer and frankly, in their own eyes when they go home at night.
I mean, to make this real for the audience, I did some work with a delivery company that everyone on this podcast would know. And they literally had 13 screens that their people were looking at, and this was a number of years ago. So they've solved this problem since then. But at the time, the employee experience was really hard to get the employees to be able to digest all the information they needed because all their systems didn't talk to each other.
Right, right. I don't remember who introduced the term swivel chair computing, but that when you think about, it makes sense what that looks like, right? Back and forth between screens. And then we wonder why people aren't amazingly empathetic on the phone talking to customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so many opportunities. I mean, a lot of the early automation opportunities. I love the way you pair AI, intelligent automation. A lot of them were in the low code space, right? And Appian, Mendix, other firms that, Salesforce is the leading low code platform where companies are using AI to simplify the experience. And now AI is, not just making it easy to do drag and drop and much easier coding of experiences, but it's more of a voice-based experience. It's totally changing the game to creating experiences and how people engage.
And it's going to stay as a portfolio. Not everyone, you're not going to jump to full AI agents, although the idea of full engaged AI agents and then an AI agent talking to an AI agent and then the humans only doing what humans need to do, that is super inspiring. It's also terrifying. And since you spend a lot of time on culture, you know exactly what I mean by that. You know, go down back to robotic process automation, that scared people because it took steps out, right? Then the low code solutions took steps out. But I always think, though, remember back in the days, and I can remember this given my age, but I can think back, you know, when people didn't have computers at all. And then when we had them, people were, oh, you're going to be so much more productive. No, you're just going to get a lot more done. Is what's gonna so it's not like stuff's gonna come off your plate. You're gonna go home at 10 o'clock in the morning. You're just gonna get a lot more stuff done. So I hope really that's what ends up happening and get a lot more stuff done is happier customers, and happier customers make more successful businesses.
So let's break it down a little bit for the audience. What are some of the use cases that you see as having most impact with AI and intelligent automation for CX?
I'll this year I'll give you a use case that that blew me away, and the reason it blew me away is when I was a managing director over in Europe, and I was selling robotic process automation as a tool, right? We would implement it as a large company. And I only knew a couple of robotic process automation companies. So I was very happy that I sold to this telecommunications company with a customer service desk an RPA solution. And it was a good solution. And then a few months later, I found a much, much better solution. I don't know if you want to talk about names, but I could name that company that was a much better solution. And here's what it did. When the phone rang, and this goes is now taken on agents as well. And when I mean agents, AI agents. So the phone rings, and while the phone is ringing, the AI agent and intelligent automation solution is looking up that phone number. Now, of course, it's looking up the number so you can see the name. But not only is it doing that, it's running a scan over the last 12 months of the billing history of the customer. And it's looking for any anomalous billing. So if it, you know, the bill's the cyclical thing in the summer, the winter, whatever, suddenly there's 1 month that has a really big bill number to it. Then it's researching what that really big bill was, then it's coming up with a script to feed to the customer service agent about that. So by the time the phone is answered, the person would say, and this is a real case from Sweden, by the time the phone is answered, the person would say, I'm, you know, my name is Johan Svensson or whatever from Sweden. And, you know, he's angry, right? And the customer service agent says, Johan, or Mr. Swenson, whatever, I see you're calling. By any chance, is it about your bill? Well, yes, my bill's all screwed up. Well, I see in the month of August that you had an anomalous bill where it was a €200 charge on your bill. That doesn't look anything like your normal bills. By any chance, is that what we're talking about? Yes. And then you find out it's a video that they streamed in a hotel while they were on vacation in Mallorca or whatever, right? And that's all being fed to the customer service agent in advance. Not only what is the problem, in other words, the swivel chair computing is being done by the automation tool. But what do you say in a case like this? And then on the bottom of that, what are possible things you can say to make the customer happy, right? If they're really screaming at you, choose choice A. If they're partly screaming at you, choose choice B, etc. And if you think of how far that has come, and that's you know in the last 5 or 6 years that stuff has happened. So I think that is a fantastic example. To simply do the stuff that's making the customer wait and it's frustrating the agent.
So, a lot of what we're talking about right now are use cases in call centers. I'm sure we'll expand to other use cases across other employees that touch the customer experience because there's a lot of them, But just to stick with this one for a minute, there's a lot in here just to play back and amplify some of what you're saying, like for the audience. One thing is that when frontline employees are in a call, often they have to summarize things at the back, and the AI will save them time to have to do that. That might save 3 to 5 minutes per call for a person who's busy to focus on calls instead of summarize. Plus, you get more accurate information in the summary that people don't often imagine that. Take the time to fill out a detailed summary. They don't really want to do it,
Exactly. And it
right?
gets done at all. Sometimes it doesn't get done at all, right? So
Oh, the data quality is an issue, right? The other thing is at the beginning of the call, instead of them having to scroll through the history and have like 15, have like 5 seconds or less to do it, before, while they're waiting to pick up the caller in during their greeting, the AI is actually predicting what it's going to be about and giving them a prompt.
On top of this, sentiment analysis is another incredibly powerful tool. You can use sentiment analysis when it's dial in and they leave a message, or of course, you can use it live, real time. So as the conversation is happening and the AI is listening, and the AI says, this customer is starting to use the words that, and it can then prompt, these are some of the mitigations, or here are some opportunities, ways and you could start to spread. Think of what we used to do, and we still do in most cases. You'd go train everyone. You'd go, okay, everyone, let's sit down and have our morning meeting on what to do when they scream at you on the phone. Well, now the AI tool will not only give them what to say, real time training, it is balancing all those different accounts and hearing what the different sounds are and being able to categorize those calls. It makes people actually makes people more human because they can say, "Oh, maybe I missed that cue. My tool's telling me."
Well, a great example of that is, I recently did some work with a retail client in the consumer electronics space, Chris, and they would randomly audit, not review a sample of calls to give coaching to their people in the call center, right? And in this particular case, this was an inbound call center generating revenue, so it wasn't just problem resolution, but they would actually, in their business, close orders or get people to go back and shop online afterwards because it's an assisted sale, and they're coaching people on like how to buy everything they need to be a podcast host, right? Like how to buy the right microphone and computer and all the other stuff you need to be a good host. And like I got a lot of tips from working with that client about the gear I should get, right? Um, and But in the call, what was really interesting is there were lots of training. It was requiring humans to listen to calls and give feedback. And the survey they were doing of a fraction of the call participants didn't give them a lot of actionable insights about how to train people and give them better behavior. So what we identified is actually like in the anatomy of a call. You want people to feel relaxed, supported, confident, and optimistic. These are the emotions of the customer. It's a crescendo. And what would the salesperson do to make people feel that way? And then you can start using the AI to listen to the call to give better feedback, but also real time coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I can hear somebody listening to this thinking, "Oh, that's really manipulative, and that's really" not really. What it really is as if someone's over your shoulder saying to you, "Hey, now would be a good time to do this and to talk about this." And then they see that it is successful, the customer is happy. We're not talking about manipulation, we're talking about really trying to connect with potentially 100 people a day, 200 people a day, right? Adjust to 200 people a day.
And if you want to do a crawl, walk, run and not jump straight to running and flying, you can summarize calls. You can give people prompts at the beginning. You can do training afterwards instead of during real time. You can do simulation to practice, and you can do real time assistance. But there's so many other things you can. And by the way, you can get rid of the survey because if you have the call, you don't need to do a survey.
Right, if you're getting all the analysis now, of course, it's not like we're waving a magic wand and this all happens. These systems have to be trained on the individual circumstances. When this is what happy looks like, this is what unhappy looks like, this is what, a service failure looks like, etcetera. But yeah, I don't think you're gonna ever get rid of the training. You shouldn't, because there are nuances that AI is not gonna pick up on, or best practices of your company. Think of something like a company like Disney that has a really strong culture in the way they answer the phone and the way they talk to people, or the Ritz Carlton. You still need to reinforce that on a personal level. But the tools, like you said, the tools are useful both real time and after the fact.
So a lot of what we're talking about right now are about how customer and employee experience go together. And I'd like to give a quick plug now to a set of mastermind groups that I'm doing with some colleagues, and there's one of them on how CX and EX goes together with Tamar Cohen, who was on the podcast recently. So listen for a minute to some more information about these mastermind groups, and then Chris and I will continue our conversation on the other side. Allow me to briefly interrupt the podcast to share an invitation for you to join one of our mastermind groups. These groups are for leaders building out the CX function at their organization. They are for culture champions looking to develop and sustain behaviors that bring their organization's mission, vision, purpose, and values to life. I'm excited to team with Randy Rothenberg, former CEO of the IAB, on a mastermind group focused on experience as a winning marketing strategy. I'm teaming with Tamar Cohen, who has led CX and EX teams at Zoetis and Travelers, on another group focused on CX EX alignment, and with Greg Kihlstrom, host of the Agile Brand podcast, on a group focused on building a self-funding growth flywheel. Each group meets monthly for 90 minutes. Members receive a coaching hour each month and can attend quarterly workshops. Go to JourneySpark's website for more information. Please DM me on LinkedIn with any questions. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Chris, I've really been enjoying the conversation around how CX and EX go together. And we've been talking a lot about call center employees, but there's certainly a lot of opportunity and focus with AI. But what about other frontline employees for training and feedback and customer listening, whether they're customer success or salespeople? Like, why stop at call centers?
Well, I absolutely there, and I give another talk on this subject, and one of the slides I bring up is, what's so different this time, of all the other technological transformations we made, move to the cloud or whatever. And what's so different is that AI affects positively, hopefully, almost every single function in a company. Moving something to the cloud, how many people did that affect? A certain number, but AI can affect every single human being under the sun. So a salesperson out on the road using AI to quickly respond to a customer's questions by querying their own GPT within the company instead of calling the tech team and all this other stuff, the salesperson can be completely responsive to an answer. And that there's nothing like, let me get back to you, I need to call my tech team. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear the answer to the question. So that's another very powerful tool for people to be able to use. And over time, as we start to move to devices that are on your face and all that kind of thing, you're going to get even more potential help as to what you can do. But now, and you mentioned it earlier, Matt, we were talking about you can talk to AI. And that's what I think a lot of people are still not really using, where you can literally just take your phone and ask it very hard questions as if you're talking to a virtual assistant. And why couldn't you do that in a sales environment? Why can't you do that in every marketing environment when you're trying to, or even better yet, you're out at a trade show. So you're the marketing person and you're out on the trade show and you're standing there and finally someone comes up to your booth and they're really interested in what you do. And if you can just answer this question, right, this will go from a casual conversation to potentially a mutually financially beneficial relationship. And you can ask it those tools. So AI is anytime there's a customer interface, time, complexity, information, it brings it to the forefront. It brings it to the human to be able to be humans.
One thing you got me thinking about, Chris, is like a number of years ago, a lot of companies were investing in like Workplace by Facebook, and Salesforce had employee solutions, and they were building AI low code solutions before ChatGPT, some of which the use cases were voice based. Like, for example, Walmart built a solution where employees in the store could ask questions, so that the most commonly asked questions, so that they can get on the phone right there in the store. It's meant so that it saves the employees time and they don't have to go make a phone call. They can do it on their phone in the store. And there've been a lot of use cases like this where people are enhancing the employee experience through voice. You do a lot with AI, helping companies figure out how to apply stuff like this. What are some of the things that you see as low hanging fruit at that EX CX intersection?
So you mentioned get on the phone and be able to do things. So think of in the retail environment, and this is I can't wait to see this actually go into reality, but because AI has natural language processing and natural language recognition, you can say the same words you would say to a human being. Let me give you an example. You walk into Home Depot or Lowe's and you walk up to some person wearing whatever the orange or the red, apron, and you say, "I'm looking for a thing that'll hold a shelf thing kind of, bolt thing that screws it to the, and then, in other words, you're not using any of the words that make sense from the SKU on the retail. So you say that same thing into your phone, and you'll be able to do this into your own phone before long. And it'll say, "Do you mean a hex squared, bolt that looks like this? Is that what you're looking for, right? Oh, by the way, that's on aisle 23. And the best way to get there is like this, right?" And now imagine that. It's going into Home Depot. It's they ever since they shifted to primarily commercial focus, builders and contractors, they just ignore us normal human beings. Like you, well, it won't take long until you're going to be able to do that.
See, I
Say,
told you he's not a bot. He's a normal human being.
right. So, I mean, so now expand that to all kinds of other physical locations. As a hobbyist, I make things out of leather. I make bags and books, wallets and passport cases and things. I'd love to be able to walk into a leather supply store and say, "I'm working on the following project. What do you think the things I should put right?" And out, boom, 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 and take that to any store, any hobbyist store in the world, right? So I think unfortunately, we've all complained about bad customer service in various places, and it would be great if everyone suddenly got to be great customer service agents. But what if you pair a really powerful tool with a reasonable customer service agent? I think that brings you to world class.
Very cool. I mentioned you have a book, Noble Automation Now, and I love the way you talk about like noble automation and like noblesse oblige on one of our recent sessions that you gave for CX on the Rocks, and it reminded me of how Simon Sinek talks about leaders eating last, right?
So, yeah, another way of saying it, right? The military teaches you that too.
Yeah. So, what motivated you to write the book, and what are some of the lessons learned from your experience working with intelligent automation AI that you'd like to share with the audience?
Thank you for that question. That's a great question. So the title Noble Automation comes from Noblesse Oblige, which is I'm not a liberal arts major, so I had to look that up. And it means the obligation of the leaders and the people in power to treat the people underneath them with respect and dignity, right? And that duh, right? You can call it servant leadership if you want to now. Where it came from is I've seen and been involved with several really successful implementations of automation and some spectacular failures. And guess what? They leave, remnants behind them, right? And one of the most powerful remnants, I tell this story, and I think I have this in my book as well. The CFO of a finance company, I'm in the room as a consultant back, and I've just met this person. And I'm sitting back behind him against the wall. And he stands up with a big stack of reports and things, and he's got about 150 people in the room. And he says, he's a Danish guy, but he says it in English. He says, "I'm very excited about this intelligent automation thing, and we have these people here to help us. And I just want you to know that in 2 years, half of you will not work here." And
Thank you very much. Yeah.
so, yeah, when you think about that, and I talk a lot about that in the book, there are people who will not be in your company as a result of a bunch of intelligent automation. But some of them, if you're growing, some of them are going to be just in different roles. Some percentage will leave. The most successful projects are when people know what is going to happen with them and they know up front. It's okay if they're going to leave. There's a way to work that where that's good for all people, or it's okay if their job's going to stay exactly the same, or if their job is going to be very different. But a noble leader, a noblesse oblige leader, a noble automation leader focuses on that. You can say, "Oh, it's because you're being nice to your people." Yeah, that's partly it. It's just good leadership. It's what makes people feel good about what they're doing and contribute. And that's why a great military leader waits till the whole crew's eaten. And if he shows up and there's no hot dogs left on the plate, that's what being the captain is. It is what it is.
Well, what you're highlighting is you're not just trying to save money, and you're not just trying to enable your employees to be more productive, but you actually pay attention to how the effort is going to affect the people's lives in the transformation, and that's why they're going to buy in more because they feel like it humanizes it for them.
The alternative, we've seen what the alternative looks like. I worked at Accenture and Deloitte. Accenture's got a much larger outsourcing business. When you just strip jobs out of a company and you throw them into some offshore place because the labor rate is lower, it doesn't take long until you have no loyalty in your company whatsoever. That's what you end up with. You end up with a bunch of robots, a bunch of people just doing what they want to do. Henry David Thoreau in the 1800s said, most people live lives of quiet desperation. That quiet desperation comes from a lot of things, one of which is bad leadership in an office. Nobody cares. I'm just doing my thing. I really don't matter. You know, there's so much lost human potential on the table. And it sounds like I'm preaching, but when you finally been around it long enough and you see what works and what doesn't, that's what works.
Yeah, I wrote an article with a colleague, Sujay Saha, who was on the podcast recently. But it was about leadership experience. And what we were talking about, Chris, is how a lot of focus gets put on customer experience or employee experience separately. But Suja and I talked about leadership experience, which is, and we did it with like a neuroscience lens. But like the basic gist of it was you can't create value as a leader without focusing on either customer or employee experience. There is no way to create value, even on a cost focused effort. You have to touch either customer or employee experience to create value. And if you cut costs in a way that doesn't consider the employee impact, you're going to get a lot of resistance and you're not going to get as much impact out of the effort.
I think what you just said. How is it that anyone doesn't understand that? And yet, we both know a lot of people don't understand it. They get into their box, their metric. I love it when you say to a team full of people, I want you to give me world class quality and a 50% cost reduction in the department. How's that going to work? Right?
Well, I think actually, to bring it back to the whole CX on the Rocks group that, the collective you and I are both part of, there's been a lot of discussion in that collective about, uh, and I had, Sean and Jason and others from the group on the podcast before. And a lot of what we've talked about, in the collective is CX on the rocks? Are there challenges? Now, I think a lot of cut to the chase. A lot of what the industry is facing is there's enormous. I like to see the glass half full versus half empty. There's a lot of opportunity with AI in particular and data and analytics that if you're just focusing on CX as doing surveys, you're going to be on your back heel, right? But if you're focusing on customer experience as how do you create value, how do you drive business outcomes, how do you link, analytics, e-commerce, shopper marketing, loyalty, great service, all these things together, which drive business value, then CX has actually got enormous win in the sales. But it's being combined with other parts of the organization that tackle these other things, in particular AI and data.
You and I have talked about this before. Business has a tendency, unfortunately, to have trends or fads that go through it. Now, some fads are just stupid and should never have happened to begin with. And other fads are temporary rebranding of things. Quality is a great example of that, right? So, and you could say servant leadership is another example. It's a trendy brand, but what it really means, quality really means really think about how this works and do it so it doesn't fail very often and it delights the customer. Servant leadership, be a good leader. Noblesse oblige is an expression that's been around for hundreds of years, right? It's not a new thing,
It's a
right?
feudal expression originally.
It is a feudal expression. It goes all the way back to, I think, what was her name of the Habsburg Empire? She's the one I quoted all the time. Um, Ter- Mary Teresa something was the queen of the Habsburg Empire for years. But the point is, these little fads so CX is an example of that, right? Suddenly everybody says customer experience, and it's a fad when they hire the head of the new thing. So imagine the head of servant leadership. Now that's just stupid, right? What you should do is teach people how to be great leaders. Customer experience needed to get focus initially, but now I think everyone should be understanding.
You see this organizationally where something's important, and then people say, let's create a center of excellence, create a team on that. And we've seen this multiple times, with let's create a digital center of excellence, or let's create an e-commerce center of excellence, or let's create an analytics, or even in marketing, let's create a search team. Well, then eventually when everyone does search in marketing, you no longer need a central team, right? So the center of excellence always needs to think of the next thing to do or to bring other things in. Otherwise, it becomes obsolete.
Yeah, there needs to be a story for like I think if the whole company said, "Hey, we don't have this skill set. We're going to temporarily concentrate it in one place, and then we're going to spread that skill set throughout the business." So you shouldn't be bothered that the function. There's nothing wrong with that. It means we've gotten on board and we've learned, and we're spreading those skills. That's a good thing. Otherwise, the people who used to be the new thing feel like, "Oh, I'm no longer the new thing." Well, if it worked well, it spread.
By the way, we're not neither of us are arguing that it's not valuable to have a central team helping engage the organization and, collaborate externally, collaborate internally, drive upskilling, drive excellence. What we're saying is it's not static. It doesn't stand still. That things so like if you have a customer experience team that's centralized that does survey analytics, it's now outdated. Right, you need to combine it with other things like AI and automation and other things that are powered by AI now. The team can have an enormous impact, but it may not be called CX anymore, or it may be called CX if you incorporate these other elements in it.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think the downside is if someone thinks they're no longer fashionable, that kind of lowers their morale. And yet, if our whole goal is to introduce this new skill, and the best way to introduce it is with a bunch of people who know it really well, then spread it through the organization, and then celebrate victory, and then keep it going. Keep those things going in whatever way you can. And I think everybody feels better about it that way.
Well, what we're talking about actually, is culture. Is building a movement in the company. And you were talking a moment ago, use the word fad. I'd like to pivot that slightly. And I like to talk about cornerstone disciplines. So like quality management is a cornerstone discipline. Agility is a cornerstone discipline. Human-centered design is a cornerstone discipline. There are other ones. And these disciplines are bodies of rituals and mindsets and skills and behaviors that your culture tends to skew towards one direction or the other. And if you understand which cornerstone discipline is has traction in your company, that's actually you can generate positive momentum for your customer experience efforts by attaching it to one of these disciplines. And right now, with a lot of the focus on AI and intelligent automation, there's a lot of opportunity, whether you call it agility or experimentation or collaboration. Like there's a lot of behaviors you want to drive in the organization that take advantage of this. It's a culture opportunity.
I have never been like an HR reorg person, who redesigns the organization, but I've been involved in more of them than I can count, right? Because you're either the victim or the beneficiary of those things. I think it is a great thing to do. Look at a business as almost like a life form. It's organically moving and changing and morphing. What do you want to accentuate? What do you want to reward? Anyone who doesn't want to reward customer experience, whatever it's called, doesn't understand business, right? Of course, you want the customers to be happy. So anyway, we're in the same church. I think we're
Oh yeah, and by the way, this for the whole organization as a life form. I love and I recommend to the audience the book "The Living Organization" by Norman Wolf. He was a guest on the podcast as well. Norman led He was a leader at HP, and then he left later to form his own consulting business. And the Living Organization had an intro by the CEO of Whole Foods, like who really endorsed the book.
oh
But
wow,
it's a really really good book about like thinking of your organization as a living organization. You
I'll
maybe
get
think about
something out
that,
of this
Chris.
podcast. This is great.
Yeah, and then people can find the review to the book on the screen now if you want to go to the JourneySpark website. So one of the things that um, I love that you use also in some of your talks is the hero's journey. When you talk about um, the hero's journey and how you can help humans be heroes. Um, what do you mean by that? And then maybe share a little bit of that talk track with the audience.
So to those who don't know what the hero's journey is, I'll give a really compressed version of this. A person named Joseph Campbell was a leading mythologist in the world. Actually, he had studied mythology around the world, and what he found from all these different um, cultures was a recurring pattern. This circle, and this pattern showed up in all these stories in cultures that had never interacted with each other, and yet the pattern was very, very similar. And so what he started to realize, and at the time he called it the monomyth. We now call it the hero's journey, but he called it the monomyth. And what he realized is that human beings basically mimic real life in our stories. Now we make the stories look more, fanciful. We put dragons and, abominable snowmen and big snakes or whatever we put in there is the villain. But human beings start at a state where things are kind of the status quo, and then they move. If they choose, they get the call to adventure. And the call to adventure in the case of AI is, hey, we're going to implement this brand new technology. That's scary as hell to a lot of people, right? So that's the call to adventure. Part of it, you say, I could be better. I could be more valuable to the company. I could do great things. But the other part of you says, I could be marginalized. I could be irrelevant. I may not be able to handle it. And you cross this threshold into the new phase of the world. And Star Wars, the movie Star Wars, is almost completely based on the hero's journey. But hundreds and hundreds of other movies are also based on the hero's journey. And the reason it's based on the hero's journey and the reason it resonates with everyone is because people get the call to adventure. And then they cross that line into the new world, and they have to assimilate to this new, they have to learn new skills and overcome new challenges in the office. That might be politics, new technology, whatever. And then they overcome this series of challenges. But before they can overcome them, they inevitably get a mentor. And in the case of Star Wars, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. But pick a movie and there's a
So
mentor.
you can be our Obi-Wan for AI.
I'll be the Obi-Wan for AI. That would be great. Well, LBI, the Obi-Wan for implementing this stuff like this. There's a lot of
Can I be Yoda for culture?
you may be Yoda. Yoda is the same thing. Yoda, the Force, the older Jedi. And I don't want to get too hung up in Star Wars, but the point is, there's a coach and a mentor who is not the hero. The coach and the mentor is the person who helps the hero on their journey understand this new world enough that they can then take their own journey, right? So they've separated out from what the old world is, and now they're in this challenge. And then they have to work through this series of challenges. Pick the book, pick the movie, they're all different challenges. But nobody finishes a hero's journey until they face the dragon. And it's a dragon in some things, the Knights of the Round Table, it's another thing, right? The dragon represents in the stories, it represents death. But in real life, like you could get killed, Darth Vader can cut your head off. But in real life, what the dragon represents is fear. Everyone implementing AI or having AI implemented on them is facing a dragon, and that dragon is fear. It's not the fear of death. It's the fear of failure. It's the fear of irrelevance. It's the fear of feeling stupid, right? So once they realize, oh, I've used these lessons from the mentor and I've adopted this new skill, and they face that fear and they overcome it and get a successful implementation done in what they're doing, then the last phase is the return. And the return is when they bring back that knowledge. Think of the movies, right? They bring back that knowledge or the chalice or the ring or whatever it happens to be. They bring that thing back to the tribe. And they have to bring it back in a way that's very helpful for the tribe, right? So you say to the tribe, hey, I just overcame this thing. You can too. We can do great things. And then the circle goes again and again. So as soon as I'm not a liberal arts major. I didn't know what this was. But as soon as I realized what that was, I thought, oh my God, how many years of my life have I watched people work in their jobs? They don't talk like that. They're like, yeah, I'm an accountant. Yeah, I'm a this, I'm a that. I pay the check. Give me a beer, whatever. No inspiration, no hero's journey. Basically, lives of quiet desperation. So I compare the two. The live, a quiet desperation, really wishing you could do more and be more in your life, but accepting for whatever reason you're never going to be, or taking the hero's journey, accepting the call to adventure. And we as leaders, if we're successful as leaders, first we do it ourselves. We take our own hero's journeys. But then, like every great leader, you take your team on hero's journeys. You don't have to use these terms and talk about lightsabers and all that stuff, but you have to talk about those phases because that is the way, that's the human condition to achieving great things. So once I stumbled onto that and realized, oh my God, at times in my life that have been amazing and successful, it's been a hero's journey. The time that it's been horrible and I wanted to jump off a bridge, sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone on that. It's been a life of quiet desperation. And thank you for asking. That is why I talk about the hero's journey and making a human a hero. So think of Star Wars. The humans are doing amazing things, but it takes a robot to get them out of the trash compactor. Right? Place for the robot and a place for the human.
Yeah, and if folks want to see more on this, you can go to the uh, CX and Culture Connection site and register and watch back the talk that Chris gave recently on this. If you go to www.cxontherocks.com, you can register and find this and other talks from Chris. And I'm sure he'd be very happy to connect with you and talk more about it if this sparked your interest.
Send me an email and I'll send you a lightsaber. Wait a minute. No, no.
That's an expensive premium giveaway. Yeah,
Those were like $800.
even if it's a plastic one you buy at like, on Amazon, it's
I
still
think, yeah,
expensive.
I think Disney's got them that are like between $500 and $800 for these things. So anyway,
Yeah. So, one last question I have, Chris, is, you're also a Vistage chair, and do you provide coaching to CEOs and also do speaking through that, helping them address their growth challenges and strengthen their culture? What are some of the key themes you often focus on with the CEOs when you're providing executive coaching through Vistage?
so I am now a Vistage speaker as opposed to at one point I was a Vistage chair and a Vistage speaker. I am now a Vistage speaker, which means I go from different group to different group as opposed to being with the same group. And the point that this is exactly what I talk about with Vistage groups. A Vistage group is a CEO, managing director, a leading partner of an organization, usually small to medium companies. And guess what? They can't afford to have 20% of their workforce demoralized and living lives of quiet desperation. Their companies are too small. So I focus on two ends of the spectrum. One, this helping humans be heroes and the hero's journey. And two, what are some really practical, basic things you can do here that'll fundamentally improve your business? Show me a small business owner who's not running around like a one-armed paper hanger, and that's what they're like. So I'm trying to focus on how to make their life easier and how to get the most out of their employees.
So if people wanted to work with you, is the best way to have you come in as a speaker at a company event, to do coaching, to do projects, to do fractional work? How do you work with companies, with clients?
Thank you for asking. I do, and you kind of walk through that basically. I usually come into contact with people via a public speech at an industry event, or maybe I've been brought into several companies to actually go and talk to their teams. And I take it a couple of steps, one step at a time, is to introduce these ideas and see how they go over. If the leadership team, if it resonates with the leadership team of the company, then that's a good fit for me. If it doesn't, if they say, what are you talking about? Well, they're a good fit for someone else. And then I go through a detailed workshop. I take specifically the managers through the ideas of how to implement this stuff, not just the hero's journey stuff, but project selection. How can you successfully implement these things so that they don't blow up your business? How do you think about the organization structure when you're implementing AI? What are the incentives involved? I love it when the consultants are paid one kind of consultant or one kind of fee. The employees want something else. The leadership of the business want a third thing. So I help them understand what those are, and they make their own decisions of how they're going to do it in their own company.
That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to more collaboration inside the collective, and I really enjoyed having you on the podcast. And hope you spark some great ideas for the audience. I definitely know you have for me.
Well, the feeling is mutual, Matt. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I mean, you and I talk on a weekly basis now, so it's fantastic. The
Yeah,
world is the hero's journey out there. The question is, will you accept the call to adventure?
Thank you very much, Obi-Wan.